All right, here we go. All right. So, guys, something we've talked about. And again, even in the title of our of the course is this idea that as much as we're coaches, we're becoming leaders. This idea that we coach coaches, but we also take a look at the overall vision and growth of whatever the organization we may be. And one of the things we always talk about that I use this all the time in my consulting and everything else I do. There's a lot of great ideas out there. There's a lot of things that we want to do, but you got to pay for them. And so I've seen many a times I've gone to meetings where the initial conversation was whether about a facility, a program, a staffing, or whatever. Hey, that sounds great. But then the question, what often dies is when you say, well, how am I going to pay for this? So I think today's presentation is really getting you thinking in terms of going outside your traditional revenue streams. And a lot of us are, and especially in the college environment, and I don't know how it works with a couple guys that are college guys, but you get X amount of dollars from the university to run your program. And then and that covers, X amount of essentials, whatever it may be, that if you want to do anything else, then it's about you becoming entrepreneurial and trying to generate revenues. So today I want to give some ideas. I want to put some frameworks out there and give some examples of things, but also if anyone, try to also turn it into a dialogue that if people have had things that have been successful within their organization and generating revenue, I think it's an opportunity to share with one another. And we picked up I'll be honest with you, I've picked up 2 or 3 great ideas over the years doing this with the master coaches of some of the things that different people have done. So let's just talk about it. And again, when I say external revenue generation, we're basically talking primarily about corporate partnerships, the idea of fundraising and philanthropy, and also the writing of grants. Now, I'll say the frame of reference I come from is I've done all 3. As far as corporate partnerships are concerned, I've sat on both sides of the table. Number 1, I've sold sponsorship. And then number 2, I've been the person determining on whether or not I'm going to sponsor something. In terms of fundraising, as serving as Division I athletic director, even for the 6 months that I did it, I would say that fundraising was probably 60 to 70% of my job. And the idea that, at University of Delaware, our athletic department budget, I think mine was about $29 million, that the institution provided about 80% of our operating budget. More pressure on increasing both corporate sponsorships as well as fundraising to get that more to a 70-30, 60-40, believe it or not, was the ultimate goal. And then as far as grants are concerned, I've been the recipient I've been fortunate in writing grants for the past 15 years that have generated probably, about close to $3 million in funding as far as writing grants. So grant writing, the joke about grant writing is always that the happiest day is the day you get the grant. The saddest day is the next day when you have to start doing what you said you were going to do. So that's kind of an inside joke in the, in the grant world. But this idea of you want to do something, sometimes you got to go find a way to make it happen. Okay, so I guess the first thing right there is, what are you guys currently doing? I know we have college, we've got club. How many of you would say that you're doing some type of beyond, and this goes back to the finances, when you talk about the finances of your organizations, like, Ryan, when I look at the college guys, you're getting X amount as far as your budget is concerned, and that's where your money's coming from. But are there responsibilities as far as your programs are concerned that you have to generate the revenue? And then the people from the club environment, are you doing anything in regards to these type of activities?
Yeah, Matt, I guess I'll start. For us, I raise about 2 times what my budget is just to operate and help with some part-time assistant staffing and so forth. So for ours, our camps are big revenue generators for us. Obviously, but we do golf outing. We've done raffles. We have some sponsorships with our field through alums or friends in the community and supporters.
Okay. And how much is that you're responsible for?
I raise twice my operating budget. So
twice your operating budget.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I raise about $40,000 to $50,000 a year for us.
And what's the is that a breakdown of do you have a set goal, or do you say, hey, what we make, we make?
It's more what we make. Each program for us is kind of on their own, but we're all obviously underfunded. So I've been here 11 years and I've gotten maybe a 2% increase one time in my operating budget. So they're not going up. I take that back. We just got a $5,000 raise just last week to our operating budget for next year's fiscal year. So that's by far the biggest jump we've ever had.
Okay.
So for us, each program's it's what you want to do, right? So if you want to travel, if you want to compete and outfit your team like we're performing at in our athletic department, then we got to go raise funds. So most of our coaches are minimally raising equivalent to their budget, if not more.
Now, Ryan, you're going somewhere that it's kind of an interesting topic, and I think it can impact both club and college environments. Is it each program on your own, or is that a centralized initiative that Ryan goes and weighs 50 grand? Does that go into the athletic department, or does that go into women's soccer? Because down the hallway, Brian Longbottom doesn't do anything with softball.
Yeah, we have a little bit of both. We have some collaboration between programs. We have a general budget, but really what I'm talking about is more our specific budget. So we've had a couple administrators over the last 5 to 10 years that want to kind of put that all under one umbrella and house it. And we have a lot of long tenured coaches here who obviously want their piece of the pie that they have. So it's a discussion around here constantly. I'm fine with it because I'm becoming one of those longer tenured coaches, and I've kind of got our niche of people we go after. So, but we do some athletic department wide things as well. This weekend we have a big raffle / live auction. It's really for baseball, football, and men's basketball. And that's been talk about changing that over to be a department-wide thing and getting all 20 sports behind it to increase the number of people as well as the number of donations and so forth to raise money. So it's a little bit of both. But for me, I kind of just worry about ourselves, not necessarily what anybody else is doing. The men's program and us do a little bit together, obviously being the same sport as well. And camps collaborate a little bit.
Well, Ryan, you're kind of, I'm interested for others to chime in here, but Ryan, it's really interesting what you're saying there, because there's two schools of thought on that. Is number one is, okay, is each team, and think about this with a club now that you've got, how many rec teams, how many, age group teams, travel teams, and things like that. Do you want 25 coaches all out selling water bottles and competing against each other? Do you want a local sandwich shop be approached by 25 different coaches saying, hey, would you sponsor us? We want to go on this trip or whatever. And so there's two schools of thoughts, Ryan, because one, I used to be under your mindset of, hey, Ryan, you take the initiative, have at it. But then more and more saying that, well, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it. And now I joked about it. People always ask me why I don't carry money. That when I was at a Division III school, I stopped carrying money because every team in our athletic department was doing a fundraiser, and they said, well, that guy's in sport management. He must like sports. So I had water bottles, T-shirts, sandwiches, wrapping paper, you name it. I had somebody coming to me asking me to make a donation, making a donation. And then it says, well, is it better to be more centralized, with those efforts? And like what you said there, Ryan, is this sometimes causes hard feelings, but let's take Ryan's successful fundraiser and spread it across the entire department. And then all that money comes in. Now, Ryan, if he's, I can see where Ryan be pissed off, say, hey, man, that was mine. But to make the case that, everybody needs to fundraise, and instead of us all over in different directions and things like that, we centralize it and do it together. So Ryan's coming from the college environment. The guys in the clubs, any thoughts about that? And this is just strictly fundraising right now.
Yeah, with our club at Alpine Strikers, we tend to raise about $40,000 a year. A big part of that is two different things. We have a little carnival that we do that's involved with all the younger teams, with 56 teams in our club. Not that many, so it's pretty centralized in the area. So we do that. It raises about a good $10,000 with just small activities like carnival-wise. And then we do a gala. And everything's centralized to where we're getting everybody kind of together with a lot of silent auction items and different things like that. And we do everything together because there's so many small individual teams. If we went to the local businesses around the area and asked them for a sponsorship or a funding, they would say, oh, well, then everyone's going to come and get us, and not just one. So collectively, we've set one person out to kind of take care of all that for all the teams.
Yeah. I think that's the thing too, is that, the idea of centralization is that of I've gotten hit up by 5 different teams. I think the other side of it is that, going back to it, and I've heard this more in the club environment, that, again, somebody has a connection with somebody and there's one team it's doing all this stuff. And then it, creates an imbalance within the club and resentment, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's, you can go both that. I mean, Ryan, my thought was, and kind of dealt with this, believe it or not, Division I level, that we were looking about, we had one of the teams had a pretty cool fundraiser that they had done in the past. And basically they were told, shut it down. And I went back and said, look, I think that's a great fundraiser. Would you be willing to help us get it going? And then I'm going to guarantee you what you used to make. And then whatever else is made, I'll spread across the rest of the athletic department. And that was the pitch that I made to the guy. And he was like, yeah, I'm good with that, because he was really pissed off when he got shut down. Like, hey, I'm not fundraising anymore then. And I was like, no, man, you had a good thing. We'll get it. It's only down 2 years. We'll get it back going again. But everybody in, and I'm going to guarantee what you used to make before. And so I think there's ways you go around it. But I really think on two folds is the other thing, too, about fundraising. I know we're talking about fundraising right now, is that I think people, and you tell me, guys, the whole thing, it used to be, in my neighborhood, we have a pact. Now my kids are grown now. There was a pact. Your kid doesn't sell me stuff. My kid's not going to sell you stuff. So all the fundraising just was like, no, if you want to do it, don't do it in the neighborhood. And so more and more, I know, does anybody do that whole thing? Instead of fundraising, if you just pay $50 extra, then that's your donation. Are people going in that direction? Yeah. But I'm sick of buying wrapping paper. I'm sick of buying, whatever it might be. That it's basically been overdone in that sense. Okay. Now,
I have an out of your box idea for a fundraiser. We just did it with our club. It was actually a haunted house. So we kind of partnered with a local charity, and it was one of our parents that kind of represented the charity. They had like a warehouse. They come to us with the idea, was like, perfect, not a problem. So we had the coaches and the kids be the scare actors. We charged like $15 a head to go in. I mean, it was fun as well, to be honest. It was great kind of team bonding as well. And like I said, I was one of the scare actors one of the nights, and I was like scaring some of the kids, and it was great. I mean, like I said, we didn't really market it that well, I thought, but I feel like this was our first year. So, I mean, going forward, I thought it was pretty cool.
I think Ryan's making a great point. I mean, when you talk about different fundraisers, there's so many different forms it can take. But if you create a fundraiser that becomes part of like a social aspect of the club, that it brings the club together, and, oh, by the way, we're making money off of it. I mean, that's kind of cool. Now, I don't know how much you kept for yourself, how much went to the charity, but I think that's when you start talking about, what often happens with fundraising is basically what I said, just charge me an extra $50 because I'm going to buy the candy. I'm going to go to the silent auction, those kinds of stuff. But if you can turn it into a social event that people enjoy bringing on, but also educate them, the whole idea is that your ticket, you shouldn't be buying the ticket. You should invite somebody to buy the ticket and come to the event. So it's not coming out of your pocket. But still, I think people are, the whole things, I think it's a different environment than it was even 10 years ago on that. But I think, Ryan, that's a great example that you've turned something social. Hey, it was fun coming together, make this thing happen. And yeah, we generated revenue. And that's, the other one that's overdone is anybody doing golf outings. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, golf outings. And now, number one, people don't have time for those golf outings. People don't want to pay for the golf outings. They've really kind of, I think, run their course. I mean, I think there's some that really are, institutionalized, but to just start a golf outing and think you're going to make money. I mean, I've seen people lose their shirts on a golf outing, of what they had to pay for the course and so forth, and not getting enough golfers. So if there's somebody who's had success with it, I don't know if you can share a success story, but I think just be careful of the market and what you're doing things in.
Hey, Matt, I'll talk about golf outings real quick because we started ours about 5 or 6 years ago, and you're exactly right. Everybody has them. The same people on campus are being asked to play, the same people from the community. So I did mine a little different, which is I put it on our student athletes. So the goal is everybody gets an equivalent of a foursome, whether it's 4 golfers, 4 hole sponsors, which are great because that's all cash, or raffle prizes or whatever. But that's your goal. Ours is $90 a piece, so that you raise that 360. Some parents and families will opt out and just pay the donation and just give us it. But we're about 6,000 to 8,000 over our 5 years that we're clearing on it. So it's not a bad little event for one day. And then we do it on our first day of preseason. So we check in, we move in, and we have the golf outing. So all of our student athletes are actually the ones working the course, and we get a lot of positive feedback from that because these other outings, they don't ever see the student athletes at them. So it becomes a little bit of a team, and they have a little bit of ownership in it, the student athletes. So we've made it work, but you're right. It's maxed out. It's a dying breed for sure. The golf outing idea.
Yeah. The other one is, it's funny because we have, I know Brian Rigby's on, and we got a couple other college coaches that, this whole idea, in athletic departments, and Brian, I don't know how much of a staff you have in athletic development or Brian at your institution, but they have full-time staff. This is what they do. But I think what you're saying there, it's great. And I think also within a club, because the other thing I was going to ask about is, and again, having been at Division I AD, we do an annual ask. That it's just, hey, would you be willing to donate to our club? And I think you have special events. You can have an annual ask. In a minute, I'm going to start talking about, you can have a capital project that you're saying, hey, we're going to build a new field, get a new scoreboard, whatever it is. And then that becomes a campaign to raise money. But that whole idea, Ryan talked about your operating revenues, that a lot of people that you'll build into your operating budget that we're going to generate X amount of dollars off of fundraising. And that's where you do an annual ask, or you do that, your golf outing, and you set a goal to say, our goal is to walk away with $10,000, off this event. And I don't, I'll ask the guys in the club. It's a given that any of you have went to college, don't you get letters from your university asking you to donate back? And if you're an athlete at a university, you get asked to donate back to the athletic department. Is that appropriate in a club environment? To be asking a parent that when their kid is done, or asking the kid and or the parent of the kid when they're done to be willing to contribute back so that the same opportunities offered to somebody else in the future?
Good morning, guys. I can chime in on that and a couple more. Just briefly, the 3 parts on the club level. What we do as fundraisers is really usually the tournaments. That's where we get most of our money in because we get it from all angles. As for teams, there's not that many that actually want to do any fundraisers, but the ones that want to do it, they have to get approval. So that way we have some kind of system to go about it. On a personal level, you have to be careful. And this ties in with what Matt is asking to right now. We had an issue where a family lost their house. They got, the house caught on fire, family escaped, they lost everything and all of that. And as the board, we basically decided to do a little fundraising for the family. And we thought it was a good deal. We did it with a good intention and everything, and it actually backfired, believe it or not. Some people send emails basically saying, how do we decide who gets what and what gives us the right to go ask for money for some? So when you look at that, as a club, I think we have to tread carefully because there's always some people that don't see it the way you see it or see it the right way. I was in shock when you have a family that loses everything. I mean everything. When I say everything, it's everything, the entire house, belongings and all of that. And you have some people that actually will think that way. Very, very careful. So that's my approach on club.
Well, it's Eddie. I think you're touching on 2 different things there. The one is whenever you do fundraising, you need to communicate what the funds are being used for. So, in that case there, you did communicate that. Now number one, I give you credit for, being concerned about one of your participants, in that manner. But I think, that thing of saying, okay, we're raising money for this. So if an annual campaign often is that the annual campaign is for field maintenance. The annual campaign covers scholarshiping, needy kids, whatever it is that you say, this is the reason why we're doing this. And that becomes especially true when you start talking about a capital campaign. So if you're looking to put a turf field in, you're looking to put lights in, you're looking to put a renovate your locker rooms. I mean, you have to say, this is what we're doing. Here's a picture of actually what we're doing. And, you know, and again, I can do a whole session talking about, you know, naming gifts and things like that, that we're saying that our goal is we have a rule of thirds, that a third of the money is going to come for this, third from this, third from this. But the ultimate goal in 2 years, we're going to break ground and do what we said we're going to do. Now, the only problem with that is if you say, if I make a donation to you and you say you're going to build that, you damn well better build it. Mm-hmm. I went through this. I got threatened twice as AD that for, I believe, 6 years, we've been talking about doing a performance center. We had, I believe it was 5 individuals who each had made a commitment or actually made a donation of $250,000. So we had about $1 million sitting in the bank, but you're not building what we were talking about building for $1 million. The project was going to be close to $12 million. And so I had the one guy say, you better break ground within a year or I'll want my money back. If you don't give me my money back, I'm going to sue you. And then the guy basically said the same thing. I want my money back because you said you were going to build this and you're not even close to building it. And so in both cases, you know, it got turned over that I think we're breaking ground on the place next year, or actually at the end of this football season, I think we break ground on the place finally. But they, you know, that's the goal, saying we're raising money with a purpose. And so I think anything you're doing there, you know, you should state that up front. This is our goal. This is what we need. And we hope to hit it by this date. Now, Eddie, the other point you brought up is, you know, when you start talking about doing charitable events for others, I don't know how many are you approached about that, but I've had that both as athletic director and also with this basketball tournament I run, that I have people coming to me looking to use the event to raise money for their cause. Now, the first thought is, and I'm not saying I'm not a philanthropic individual or I care about people, but first of all, I got to raise money for myself. The second thing is, if I say yes to one cause, then it's really difficult to say no to other causes. So we made I don't want to say it's a mistake, but we did a 50-50 raffle with our basketball tournament related to a tragedy that occurred. I've had 6 different organizations approach me about doing something that would be a fundraiser for them. And then me have to say no. And then me being viewed as, well, you do it for them. Why aren't you doing it for us? Don't you care about our cause? And I'm sitting there saying, well, we have customers that are coming, they're paying, and now we're asking them to reach into their pocket again. And we still have sponsors and vendors that we're trying to, you know, make it worth their while to being our sponsor and vendor. So now we're going back and telling one organization that we are not going to do the 50-50 this year. And just saying that, you know, we've had too many requests. We still believe in your organization, et cetera, but we're stepping away from it is kind of the approach we're taking.
And I think that's a lesson that we learned because, you know, it makes sense, even though it sounds cruel, but I guess you have to do that. You have to not help one, and that's basically it, because otherwise you're going to have everybody coming and asking for helps and donations and everything else. So it is what it is.
And I'll tell you what, here's another one I'll share with you of careful going down a path of doing something like that. Mm-hmm. Firstly, we struggle with fundraising, you know, and across the board and also athletics, people aren't giving. That we had an organization that came, I think it was about 10 years ago. And did you ever see the marathon dances they do to raise money? It's a dance-a-thon type thing. And I know Penn State University has this huge dance-a-thon. They raise like, you know, a couple $1 million a year for cancer research that's done at Penn State University. Now, at our school, an organization came in and wanted to do a dance-a-thon to raise money for childhood cancer. And this has become huge. That last year, our students raised over $1 million. And it's student athletes, it's students, it's student organizations, all these things. None of that money goes back to the University of Delaware. And so I remember as AD, I'd heard about this thing, never really knew much about it, but I went to it as AD because it's in our facility. And I'm seeing this going on. And then I'm finding out that I talked to our development people for the university. They can't stand it. They said, we have people that are donating to that. And then when we ask them for a donation for the university, they say they already donated to the university. And then, as a matter of fact, we had one team, it was a female team that, believe me, they could use the money to help support their program. They raised almost $30,000 for this dance, for this cause, and none of it goes back to the university. And so they approached the organization and said, well, we have faculty members that do research related to this, can we have some of the money to support those faculty members? And they said no. So now we're put in a situation, do we say you're no longer allowed to do this? And what's that come across as? Well, what are you guys against childhood, curing childhood cancer? Or do you continue along with this and it impacts our ability to raise funds? So careful going down that path. And Eddie, I'm glad you brought that up. But going back to you individually, and I don't know your guys' thoughts about that. I don't know if I'm cold-hearted here or not, but the realities are money is going to what is a worthy cause, but at the expense of your programs. What do you guys think?
Man, I have a similar story. Ryan again. We have a Playing for Cause game in our conference. And early on in my tenure here as head coach, we would really do a lot as a staff and get our student athletes engaged. And we had great causes, and we had some great one-game events for our level, 5,000, 6,000. And we were very involved. In the last few years, I've went alone to just letting our development person and some of our athletic administration handle it, because what happened is what you're talking about is then later in the year when it came, our parents would be like, well, what do you mean? I gave $500 for your cause. And it was all, we donated all like we said we were going to. So the event still, we raise money, but not nearly as much, in large part because we solicitate our parents and our families and student athletes differently for it. So it was great publicity. It was great. But the other day, it was a lot of work for us that we got nothing out of.
Yeah.
Personally.
And then, like you said, the donor. Now, here's the other thing, too. Like you talk about golf outings. We ran a football golf outing that we lost money on. And I went to multiple football events, and I would talk to a football player, and then we'd start getting to the concept, hey, give them something back. And they all say, well, I donate, I play in the golf outing. And the football program viewed it as, well, it's just treating our alumni, I'm like, yeah, but they're viewing it as their donation. So then we make a request, they're saying, well, I already donated. I'm like, you ought to figure out how to make money off the golf outing or stop doing it, because these guys think they're contributing, and really we're breaking even at best on the thing. And so, this idea, because like you just said there, Ryan, you put a lot of time and effort into something to break even or lose money. That's not fundraising. Okay, that's not fundraising. And that's where I go back to it, Ryan, of, some of those things like that it's well-intentioned, and whether it be even if you're doing something for your program. Because the one thing about fundraising, if Ryan comes to me and asks me for $10, I'll give him $10. I made my donation. But who's not to know that I have the ability to give $10,000? And so I think that's where you talk about a centralized effort. And here's the thing, too, I always talk about. People just think fundraising and sponsorship is easy. You're going to get turned down more than you're going to get accepted. You're competing against other entities that are also making requests. And so this idea of a centralized effort, and again, in colleges, you have an athlete development or just development office at all. That's what they do. And again, can you refer to them to work with them, not be doing it yourself, but working with them to help generate that revenue? Okay. Now, we've been talking a lot about fundraising, but remember this. Fundraising and sponsorship are two different things. Fundraising is a philanthropic initiative. I'm giving because I believe in Wisconsin, whitewater soccer. It's, they do great things. They represent the community well. I'm giving you a check for $1,000, Ryan, and it's because I just believe in what you're doing. Go get them. Have a great year, and I hope the girls have an incredible experience. That's a lot different than sponsorship. I'm interested in, Ryan, giving you $1,000 because I want to make $10,000 back off the $1,000 that I gave you. And that's where we talk about the differences, that when you have a philanthropic initiative, that's fundraising. If you're trying to show that there's a benefit to, and this is why I like to use the term corporate partner, you have to show them that they're benefiting from it. And I always say this too, are you prepared to basically exploit your program and have it taken advantage of by a corporate partner, and for them to benefit so that you benefit? And there's certain organizations that, no, we're not willing to do certain things, or no, we don't do corporate sponsorship at all. But if you take a look at it, most sport organizations, and this is two ways you want to look at it within your organization. Number one, is it an essential stream of revenue? Meaning that we set aside that we need to generate X amount of dollars for sponsorship for our event to make it. And if we don't hit that number, we're in trouble. Or is it the case, like Ryan said earlier, hey, we do it. If it makes some bucks, great. If we don't, no big deal. I run an elite high school basketball tournament every December. I believe 60% of our operating revenue comes from sponsorship. We don't sell sponsorship. We go out of business. So we have a goal. Matter of fact, I just got the update sheet this morning of where we are with our sponsorship. We're about 10 grand away from what we need to hit. We hit that 10 grand, we're great. So that's where we go back to this, this idea that it's essential for us. So we've devoted a combination of we pay somebody, and also we have people that are relying upon their contacts to set up meetings and or make the meeting themselves for us to hit that number. And our sales pitch and our sponsorship is you are benefiting from it, from being associated with it. Now, some still view it as, hey, it's in the community, I want to be a part of it. Others are strictly saying, I'm giving you $1,000, I'm hoping to make this amount back. And that's the other side of sponsorship, and that's different than fundraising. So I'm just going to kind of move through the slides. I've kind of enjoyed the conversation we're going, but just a couple things real quick on both of them. I think in both sponsorship and with fundraising, you need to know what you're trying to accomplish. Now, I mentioned capital. Most sponsorship or fundraising is often tied to capital. We want to build something. It's a capital. When I say capital, one-time major expense. And when you say capital, we're building a facility, we're putting lights in, whatever it is, you're contributing to that. The annual piece is when you start sitting there saying that, we do this on an annual level. And by the way, capital campaign, you do it, and then you're done for a while. And then maybe you'll come back 5-10 years later, do it again. You can't be asking every year for an annual campaign or an annual capital project, where an annual is, going back to that point of 20% of our operating revenue we have to raise. So we do this every year to pay for our expenses. And it sounds like that's what you kind of do, Ryan, that it's a part of your operating revenue. Now, again, within the club environment for you guys, are you willing to sit down and forecast out how much money you need to run the club that we have? And this is the one thing, doing the research, working with these clubs all these years with the, doing the DOC course and stuff, most clubs are operating about 70 or 80% of their revenues are coming from registrations. And then the rest is generated from other sources. And this is where you sit there and say, okay, we're going to try to be more aggressive in generating other revenues through sponsorships, fundraising, whatever it may be. And then that leads into the conversation about essential revenue versus ancillary. In my situation I'm in right now, we have about $120,000 budget that we do for this high school basketball tournament. We have our ticket revenues. We have the numbers that we should hit. We have 2 grants that we write that we get that gets us about another 40 grand. And then the rest of it, like I said, is we got to hit with sponsorship. We don't hit it, we lose money. We go out of business, we can't do it anymore. So it's essential for us. It is essential. The ancillary, like I said, it's nice to make it. If we don't, we're not going to close our doors. I would say most clubs operate in an ancillary model. I would say most athletic departments operate in the essential model. So Ryan and Brian Rigby, you guys are in college athletic departments. That's a real conversation. I would say at the higher levels, this revenue is more essential. And then at the Division III levels, when I coached, it was like, hey, if you fundraise, that great. But I think that environment's changed, that there's a lot more expectation for you guys to be raising money to cover your expenses. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it is in the public sector for sure for us. I think it's a little different with some of our competitors that are in the private sector a little bit. But for us, it's definitely important.
And then,
yeah, I think for us, I think for us as well. Especially when, most of the programs from the Division I level, sometimes things are based off of football generated revenue or basketball generated revenue. Do they make the tournaments? Are they on TV? What kind of sponsorship money are they getting that then filters, into the department, which I'm sure is a whole other beast for us to tackle. So yeah, I think it affects everybody at all levels.
It's really interesting. I had a conversation with an athletic director in our conference, and it's kind of go back to what you're saying, Brian, that we got talking. They have a very strong swim program. Our swim program, our men's swim program is not much more than a Division III program, if not a club environment. They have no money, no scholarships, all these things. So I got into a conversation with the one AD who has a strong swim program, and he goes, look, man, operating budget, I bet you I give you the same, I bet you I provide the same amount of money that you do for your swim program. He goes, everything that we do extra that ultimately gets involved with us being able to recruit good student athletes and some of the money we have in scholarship dollars is all through alumni giving. And he goes, now I went back and looked at Delaware. Here was our problem. We had guys that swam, and always in the past, we would have people go and ask a former swimmer to donate. And oh, by the way, it's going to go to the football program. And the general response was, hey, if I'm going to donate, I want it to go to swimming. Why is it going to the football program? I don't even like football. Football, they got everything when I was there, so I'm not giving so they continue to get everything they have there. And so he said our efforts very concentrated that we hit swimmers to donate to swimming. And then at a certain point, a donor moves out of this category that they're able to give more than just giving to swimming. Then we get them having the conversation about donating to the entire athletic department. And so I think it's a really neat cultivation of giving. And here's the other thing, too, about giving. People can give at the level they can give. And I think I've always talked about this. They call it the rule of thirds, that if you wanted to raise $90,000, you get $30,000 from one set level of donors, $30,000 from another level of donors, and the other $30,000 from a higher level of donors. Meaning I got one guy who can write a check for $30,000. At the next level, I got 30 people who can write a check for, $1,000. And at the next level, I've got, I'm sorry, my math isn't the best, but they can give $100. I mean, think about this right now. Nobody be bugging me, asking me for money, but 25 years ago, yeah, $100 was, I could probably do that for something I really believed in. I would say now I write a $1,000 check for 3 different organizations that I've been associated with. And yeah, it's a tax write-off, but I can do that. I don't think I'm yet there of writing a check for $10,000. But as you move through your career, your life, where you are, all those kinds of things, people have different abilities to give. Now, TJ, Mr. Ivy League, what are you guys about there with your fundraising and revenue generation?
Yeah, I mean, it's fundraising is just totally different in the Ivy League with everything, because your focus is on your alum that are at that point in their life where they can write bigger checks. Like, you're not too focused on the younger alums. At Cornell, we do phone-a-thons every year. So the whole team got into a room and basically was calling all of the alums and asking for money. And our goal from our first year went to 40,000. By the time I left there, it was 100,000. So that just helps supplement the working budget of the team. So, but it's just a different world. And then when we moved to Yale, it's you have some key alums that you kind of lean on and go to that are bigger donors. So yeah, it's just so you still have some of the same things. You still have golf outing, 4x4 alumni tournament. You still do a bunch of things that raise some money, but you kind of have most teams throughout both schools kind of try to have a sugar daddy that they lean on. So that's just kind of how it works in the Ivy League as far as fundraising. So.
Yeah, it's nice. Cyprian, you want to say something? No? Okay. It's like you said, potentially a whole different ball game and some stuff. I know, TJ, for Princeton, we had coaches, my international program, go there, and they do a day of giving, and they have a contest across. I don't know if that's the same thing at Yale. You have a contest.
At Yale, they don't do that. But at Cornell, there was they had the annual giving day. I think it was March 25th every year. And the teams that got the most between even certain hours of the day would get bonuses. You put it up on your Twitter, your Facebook, all social media, and you just kind of push and push and push the alum. And then it's like a game too, because some alum want to donate earlier in the year, and you're like, no, wait till giving day so we can get that bonus. So that's what it was like there. At Yale, they don't have that type of kind of self-promotion with that. So.
Well, what's interesting, the thing with Princeton, it was funny, was that I guess it was the tennis program and the rowing program we had coaches with, and we always give them it's a $200 stipend for them hosting these coaches. So then the rowing coach one year said, hey, would you mind giving on giving day? Paying us the invoice and making a donation. And then so it got caught up and stuff, and I'm all worried that I'm not going to get it in on that day and stuff. And he finally said, Matt, don't worry about it. He goes, it's not going to make or break us. He goes, last year, I have a donor each year that in order for us to win, he sits and waits until the 11th hour and says, how much are we behind? And then he writes a check. So I said, what are we talking? He goes, well, 1 year is $75,000. So it's, when you're dealing with Princeton and Yale, a little bit different mindset, I guess, on that giving side of things. So, but it's that whole idea of and here's where you go back to it as far as, are you willing to commit a human resource to it? And this is where you go back and lead your organization. I mean, if you want to become dependent upon, or I shouldn't say dependent upon, it's necessary to generate external revenues beyond your registrations. Are you willing to commit a human resource to it? Because a lot of people say, okay, we're having a volunteer that's in charge of sponsorship. So you got a parent who, who has a job, is running around with the kids, and oh, by the way, I want you to raise $30,000. Now, what I always say about using volunteers is, in your club, there are relationships, so that your parents, and some of them aren't comfortable doing that. But I always have a meeting. I put together, like with our slam dunk tournament, the basketball tournament we have, I have a sponsorship committee. And then our meetings, we sit down and say, okay, who knows who in the community? And then it is sometimes they say, yeah, well, he owes me a favor. I'll send it to him. I'm sure he'll do it for me. Other times they make what we call the setup call, that they'll reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm going to have somebody from Slam Dunk call you. They're interested in maybe if you coming on as a sponsor. So it's not a cold call out, but either it's somebody in the community and somebody in your club or organization is setting that up for you. So I think that, that idea of using your volunteers, using your parents, a lot of them don't want to be bugging their friend for money, but they're happy to do an introduction and get that going that way. And that's how you try to use it. So when you say a sponsorship committee, especially in that club environment, I think it's not asking them going out and making the asks, but rather creating the environment for you to be having more success in going out and doing a sponsorship sale or doing a, making a request as far as a donation is concerned. And I think that's an effective use of your people. Now, the one thing, if you go back to sponsorship, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make on sponsorship is they think about themselves and not the organization. Remember, a sponsorship, a partnership, it's a business transaction. The partner you're approaching is you taking money from their marketing budget, not a donation, a marketing budget. I mean, it's a great example of it is, everybody talks about getting Nike and Adidas. Adidas, when they sponsor a program, they're doing it for financial gain. It's a part of their marketing initiatives. Just like if you can go to a sponsor and say, hey, nobody knows about your company, you partner with us, we're going to make people aware, and that's brand awareness of all the families in this local area. They're going to become aware of your product. When you talk about image enhancement, organizations like to be aligned with organizations or products, I should say, would like to be aligned with organizations that are doing good things. We're working with kids. You're being involved with sport, and you're very successful. That's who you're getting aligned with. The other one is when you talk about product trials and sales. Organizations like to get their product in front of people. How many people, again, a coupon is one of the most basic things you can do. Of, hey, get in a free coupon to come on in and get a free hamburger, free whatever. I mean, the other one is when you talk about product trial. And I know some of you guys did the weekend course, but you always talk about that. Creating a relationship with an auto dealer and having them come out and have their cars at your complex. Because a person's not shopping for a car if they're with their kid at youth soccer, so why don't you merge the two? And so these kinds of strategies are, potential ideas. When you ultimately go increasing sales, I always say product trials and increasing sales, coupons are one of the biggest things, some type of incentive. I mean, again, on your websites and or your Twitter feeds or Facebook, are you giving access, a link to your sponsors so that I can go to that link and say, I hit on that link, I get 10% off my next purchase, whatever it might be. And again, when you have people that see that they are benefiting from the relationship, they're going to renew. And remember, you're not the only one approaching them about potential partnerships. And I'll say that, we always talk about this idea of return on investment. Now, last one, employee morale. We've had this great with our basketball tournament. I don't know if you watched that basketball game last night with Duke, but they have the kid Cam Reddish. He played in our tournament for 3 years. And, when you start talking about it, that a sponsor sponsors our tournament, we give them, depending on your level, anywhere from 2 to 10 tickets. And when he's giving them out to his employees, that the employee takes their kid to the game, they see Cam Reddish, who's playing for Duke now, or Mo Bamba, who's playing in the NBA, and hey, I'm the boss that made that happen, that's a real good feel good thing for an employee. So again, all these things, when you sell sponsorship, you're selling it in self-interest of the partner, that they have to see the benefit. They don't see the benefit, they're not doing it. Now, like I said, I'm in the process right now of closing our final deals. We're trying to have everything done by December 1 on sponsorship. Excuse me. And, and again, we're all selling self-interest. And last year with the event, we had people benefited across multiple levels. Our renewal rate was incredible. Actually, I was amazed at what our renewal rate was. We had almost 100% renewals and people going up levels after the experience they had last year being associated with our event. And again, this is all the steps that are associated. Now, does Ryan, I don't know, Ryan, it sounds like you're pretty busy in doing some of this stuff, but is this something you want to do or is skilled to do, can do, or is this someone on your staff doing these things? I always say, when you talk about human resources, if your next hire an A license or maybe a person that can coach, but is going to be doing some of this stuff for your organization and generating that revenue, for you. But I think in this process of doing sponsorship, a couple of big ones are, what do you need? And I always go back to it. One of the easiest things for a sponsorship is, can you trade it out? Is there something that you're spending money on that somebody's willing to trade that product or service in terms for getting awareness, being associated with your program, whatever it might be? And that's where you sit there and say, what do you actually need? And a lot of times you have that given to you right up front. I'll tell you the other one I find often, who's making a decision? Who's going to sign the check? You don't want to go to the wrong person. And you need to find out who that decision maker is. A small business, it may be the guy behind the counter. You start talking about franchises, you may be dealing with a regional marketing manager, especially when you talk about a chain. Let's just take one of the pizza chains. The person selling the pizza or the manager at a local chain isn't going to have this responsibility. They're going to pass you to the regional marketing manager. When you talk about a large national company, sometimes they have ad agencies that make these decisions. So you need ultimately to find out who's the person that can write the check, and that's where I use the word cultivate. That's the person you have to interact with. And again, we do, and I talk about cultivation with this basketball tournament. I go down, I stop in at places, I go to the events that they sponsor. You be seen by them, you get friendly. It's a relationship that they feel guilty almost when they don't up the next year because we have this relationship and they're benefiting from that relationships. But I think one of the big things, guys, is when you talk to a potential sponsor, it is about them, not you. It's not what you need. It's what you're doing for them. So all of our conversations, I don't talk about the fact that, look, we don't get this money, we can't run the tournament. I'm selling them on it. Look, you guys are going to benefit this way. You want to be a part of it. I got people that are selling chicken sandwiches at our place. I got people that are getting giveaway items out. I got people that they're trying to get a foothold. We just got to close a deal this year with a supermarket that is a supermarket has a strong presence up in Pennsylvania. They're trying to penetrate Delaware. And we said, look, we're a chance. The local chain isn't sponsoring us. You have a chance to be associated with this event to increase your awareness. And they're coming in a lower level for the first time this year. And that's the other thing, too, about sponsors. They're going to give you a little bit and see what you do with it. And if you end up giving them a lot, then they start talking about, one, we want to renew, but two, let's think about going to a higher level. And then you've done a good job with your sponsorships and your partnerships there. Okay. We just talked about a lot of this stuff on the fundraising. I think we did kind of informally talk about that stuff. But here's the last one I'm going to talk about, this grant writing. Anybody have any success in doing any types of grants? In writing grants? Because I tell you, it's really interesting in sport that there are not many organizations that are going to be willing to give you funds so that you can go win a Division III championship, a state championship, develop elite players, but you can use sport to address needs of some of the funding agencies. So when I look at it, as I mentioned there's corporations that have grants. Remember, two different things. If I go to Nike and ask for money to help sell more Nike, that's a marketing question. If I go to Nike and ask them to fund a program that will promote women's empowerment, That's through the Nike Foundation, a completely different request. So when you go back to this, the idea of, and I make this, and I think for some of the people that have, that have been on the weekend course, I talk about this idea that, one, you have to go research grants. Two, you have to find the type of programs they'll fund. I find it's worth making a phone call to the organization, pitching your idea before you even write the grant. If you say, hey, we're looking at doing this, they say, nope, we don't fund sport. Nope, we don't fund that kind of project. Don't waste your time. If they say, yeah, that's interesting, why don't you submit something? Now, I always say it, that sport, getting funding for sport's sake, good luck. Using sport to address a societal need, yeah. Is it childhood obesity? Is it illiteracy? I know as far as we've had multiple grants in the past. So Eric, I think this is your project, isn't it, Eric? You're doing something along these lines?
Yeah, I was starting it, and it was just gonna take way too long to actually go through the whole city and the whole things like that. So I kind of changed up my project a little bit to more video analysis. But I was starting to go through this, and I've kind of still continued to do this. But it's gonna take anywhere from a year to a year and a half to really start knocking things down.
Okay, yeah, it's a process, and I'll tell you what, too, with writing grants. I mean, again, I would say I've been fortunate on my grant writing, but also understand I've written a lot of grants that I didn't get. I've written grants that were 30 pages long. I've written grants that were filling out basically two sides of a sheet of paper, for an organization. And they come in a variety of different forms. But I think one of the big things is if you're interested in going down this path, you're probably looking at offering, either if you currently offer a program or you create a program that then gets funded. Now, there's two things, the benefits of doing something along that lines. Number one, you're extending the reach potentially of your organization. But the second thing is there's what's written in there, it's called overhead and expenses. The one thing you can write into a grant, so let's just say you're paying somebody right now $20,000, let's pay $40,000, that you write a grant to say that we're gonna offer this new after-school program to combat childhood obesity, or to include underrepresented populations and get them involved in soccer for the purpose of integrating into the local community, whatever it might be. If you take a staff person and you're saying, let's just say their salary is $40,000, and you say that they're going to devote half of their time to this program, you can write in $20,000 of salary for that program. If you say it's going to be 10%, it's $4,000. So what you're doing is saying that as a part of the grant, you're now covering a part of that person's salary. Now that person better be involved with running this grant, and that becomes a part of it, but they still have their other responsibilities. And so that's one way of doing it. The other is, and this depending on the grants, you have what's called overhead. That in order to implement the grant, you got to turn on lights, use computers, you're using your fields, things like that. Most of them have an overhead percentage. Some of it's single digits. Some of it I've seen up to like 40% when you start talking about building labs, or if you got to build things, stuff like that. But I don't think that really pertains here. But you can say that, hey, 10% of the grant is going to go back to cover overhead. So now you're helping cover some of your expenses. I'll say this, most grants will not fund capital projects. They will fund programs, but not building projects. They'll say, hey, you get your own facility, you put the program in there. So I think, and here's where you go back to using resources. I got to think that there are people, and this is where you engage your volunteers into your organization. There are parents who have experience in writing grants. Some of them will do it purely out of, hey, I'll be happy to do it for you. Others may say to you, I'll write a grant for you, but you got to give me, 15% of what you get in writing the grant. And then that would come out of your own pocket, but then you're getting that money. When you write a grant, guys, just know you have to execute it. If you tell a funding organization that we're going to run a 10-week program, that we're going to be bringing in an underserved population, and they're going to be in 3 days a week, and we're going to run training sessions, we're going to help them with their homework, and we expect them to see improved academic performance, you damn well better do it. You darn well better have evidence that you did it, and then you better show them the results. One is, if you don't do it, you probably won't get the money next year. The second thing, if you show results, then they're going to potentially continue to fund you. The third thing is, if you promise to do something in writing that grant and you don't do it, it is fraud. It is fraud in that sense. So understand that. That's why I joked about it, that, you know, the joke in the grant world is when you write, the best day is when you find out you got the grant. The worst day is the next day when you got to start doing stuff. Now, one of the things, I got funding from the U.S. Department of State for I guess I did about 4 projects. They asked me to help them set up their and work with organizations that got these grants as well. And I was down in D.C. and I saw this one organization had put in a program that they were going to be bringing international coaches over, doing all this integration, all this stuff. So I called up and said, hey, it looks like you guys are got this coming up in the next couple of weeks. Do you need any help? Can I, be happy to help if I can? Well, we decided not to do it. And so what are you going to do? Well, we're going to take the money and we're going to do some facility renovations. And I said, look, dude, I'm going to act like you just didn't say that. And my suggestion to you is, if you haven't started those renovations, I would stop now, and you better get started working on that program. And the guy said to me, who the hell are you to tell me what to do with my money? And I said, I'm going to act like I didn't hear that either. And my next recommendation is to call somebody and that if you know who's has a legal background, and tell them about our conversation. Because right now you're bordering on committing fraud against the United States federal government, and the feds don't mess around. And he hung up the phone in like a huff and all that kind of stuff. Don't be telling me how to run my program. So I think the next day I got a phone call from him. Okay, how do I bring these international guys over here? He had no intention of ever doing the project. And then I said, look, you have 2 options, buddy. If you don't want to do it, give the money back. But if you've got that money, you better damn well spend it. So he ended up doing a half-assed project, whatever. He got a red flag next to it. They would never get funding again. And welcome to getting money from a grant in that sense. I've had other grants that we've gotten money. They've never checked up, never followed up, whatever. We submitted reports. They don't really care. But it's like they were happy to give the money out. And it's everything in between. So I do know that, grant writing, it's a lot of times just filling out an application, telling them what you're going to do, telling them how you're going to measure what you did, and then saying that you'll be able to, submit a report at the end of it. It's extra work, basically. You're not going to get a grant just to cover what you're currently doing. You're going to have to create an extra program. Now, we had a guy a couple of years ago in Alaska that did just that program. He did an after-school. It was amazing. We really gave some really neat research talking about the high rate of delinquency in Alaska with these kids. There was a native population, and the whole thing was trying to keep them engaged after they got done school, and he was doing it through the soccer program. And he ended up getting, I think, 2 different grants, and then he continued the program after he was done. And he continues to get the funding. And out of that, too, he goes, we do it for every kid's eligible, but we've also gotten some good kids out of it that have ended up being good players for our club. But that wasn't something he was currently doing. He created it, and he got the grant funding to continue it on. And then the next step he was looking at was getting actually sponsorship dollars in order to fund that, because people were excited about what he was doing. So there's your ideas as far as grant writing is concerned. Now, I'd like to try to keep this to about an hour for you guys. So I think in a nutshell, guys, and I'll have the slides up there for you. There's, like I said, a lot of great ideas out there, and a lot of times they get stopped right at the point of, well, how are we going to pay for it? If you want to grow your program, and this becomes, talking about expanding your responsibilities, 1 of 2 things. Number 1, you have to devote time to this if it's something that you consider important in growing your organization and creating opportunities. Or you delegate that responsibility out to existing staff, or are you going to be able to empower volunteers to help you do this? But I think the big question you want to ask is, when you sit down and do a retreat with your organization, are there things we want to do? And if we can't pay them with our existing resources, are we willing to take this initiatives? If you are, you got to make a commitment to it. And it takes time and effort. And like I said, with running this basketball tournament, I spend, and I'm a volunteer. I just do it because it's fun to run this tournament. But, my cultivating, phone calls, follow-up, all those things. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a full-time job, but I'd probably devote, and all said and done and putting this tournament together, I've probably devoted 3 weeks worth of time of effort on sponsorship of, getting the money that we need to do that event. And I just kind of enjoy doing it. A lot of it is people that I'm friendly with, so it doesn't bother me. I support them, they support me, but it takes time and effort to do it. Okay? Questions? I'll tell you what, let me just show you real quick. I'll share this with you. But we talk about developing decks, but this is a deck that we have that goes out to all the people that we talk about. Again, you talk about benefits and stuff, and I'm happy to share this with you if you guys want to do it. But we did market research talking about the benefits for the local community. These are the people that are there. These are the words they're talking about it. We have our different levels as far as sponsorship is concerned. Yeah, that's kind of cool that the guy in the middle is one of our big sponsors, and he has a picture with Cam Reddish, that he has on his desk. Guy's going to be in the NBA probably next year. So he's pretty excited about what we've done. And again, you see all the benefits that are associated with that sponsorship level. But those are kind of our 3 levels of sponsorship that we have. And they're clearly there. It goes out. We have our contact person. We do an event, but this year we're like right after the tournament, we do a bus trip with all our sponsors. We take them down to a Washington Wizards game. Have them on the bus, and be honest with you, that post-event, we get most of our renewals for the next year. Most guys are like, yeah, I'm in for next year. Just give me the paperwork. And we don't even have that listed as part of one of the benefits. We just kind of do as an add-on. It's not even part of it. We do it for them. Okay? But that's what goes out to all our sponsors. Okay? And then I'll say this too, like I'm doing it right now, that this sponsorship right here, I'm playing with an organization. We're not going to go to 1250. I got them to 800, and I got another 200 that we're going to cover this team to come. But I'm saying, hey, here's the stuff that that we have. So, but yeah, this is the kind of stuff, again, with the effort that you go into doing the sponsorships. Okay, questions? Ryan Quam, thanks for sharing a lot of your insights. It sounds like you're pretty aggressive in some of the stuff you've done, and you've had success definitely on that sponsorship side. And again, on corporate sponsorship, I know at Delaware, all I did when I was AD, because we have a contract with a company called IMG, they sold our sponsorship. We were guaranteed, I think we got about $500,000 from them annually, $300,000 to $500,000 that they went out and sold our sponsorship, but we were guaranteed that money. Now they would call me and say, hey, would you go have lunch with this sponsor? Would you, do photo ops, that kind of stuff. But I wasn't doing the hard selling. That was their job. So they sold all of our ad inventory, all of our in-game sponsorship, all those things the IMG sold for us. And it was kind of nice. I knew I had, I don't know if we could have made more if we sold it ourselves, but we had about, a guaranteed check in our account every time for that sponsorship. Okay. All right, guys. All good. And again, I'll put this stuff up on Google Drive, and then you said I recorded it, so we'll have that there. Next week, we have we're going to be doing the one as far as human resources is concerned, and kind of the hiring, firing, and actually Ian Barker's his wife does that presentation, and I got to find out with her. We were going to tag team and have a college athletic director one with her, but I think she may be interested in going alone. So let me see. But we got that call next week on the 14th. Okay. All right, guys. All good. All right, guys. And have a great week. And then we'll see you back on the 14th. Then I'll have a reminder out for you from the beginning. All right, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one,
Matt.
All right, guys. Take care, man.